Hi everyone, this is Melissa Tonneson. I am back with another commentary track for a Shirley Temple film. Who else? This time I've chosen 1936's Stowaway, which was the last of the four films that Shirley made in that year. 1936, Shirley was at the absolute pinnacle of her reign as the world's foremost child star, or actually foremost movie star, regardless of age. This film was directed by William Sider, who had directed Shirley in her movie previous to this, which was Dimples, and would go on to direct her in Susanna of the Mounties in 1939, and right before that would assist Walter Lang, the credited director, on 1939's The Little Princess. I'm going to be referring quite a bit throughout this commentary to a script that I have marked final, September 5th, 1936. Just because the script is marked final does not mean that what's in the script is what ended up in the film. And so throughout our viewing today, I will try to point out some of the things that were changed and some of the differences that I've noticed. Here we start out in Sanchou. I could find a spelling of Sanzhou, so I'm not sure if that was the anglicized spelling, of a town called, I assume, Sanchou, which is south of Beijing. You can see the 20th Century Fox spared no expense in creating the town of Sanchou on one of its streets in the back lot, using a number of Asian actors, including Philip Ahn, which we see here as Sun Lo. Philip Ahn was the first known Korean-American actor to play a Korean character in an American film. He was in films from 1934 through 1979. Now, in the script, the Shirley Temple character is called Johnny. But of course, in the film, her name is Barbara Stewart, which is what her missionary guardian wants to call her, but more affectionately known as Ching Ching, which means very precious. The Crookshanks are played by Helen Jerome Eddy and William Stack. Very short curls on Shirley in that scene. According to the script, the teacher asks, "What's the matter?" And they tell her that Hai Chung is coming. Then the teacher tells the children that gather around her, "Come now, don't cry, we are safe here." Shirley asks the teacher, "What's the matter, Miss Wu?" And the teacher responds that she doesn't know.
You nest in your rooftop.
He tells the teacher to take the children and follow the others, according to the script.
I will, because you taught them to me. It was a great privilege to instruct the daughter.
I raised the volume so we could hear one of Shirley's many Chinese proverbs or Chinese sayings that she sprinkles throughout the course of the film.
To protect you from trouble that may be here very soon.
In addition to the Chinese proverbs that she speaks in English, she was tutored by UCLA student Bessie Nye in over 400 words of Chinese. She, however, was taught the Mandarin dialect. She tried to speak, according to Shirley's autobiography, Child Star, written in 1938, she tried to speak to some of the extras on the scene, or in the scene, using those words, but they were of a different dialect, and so those extras could not understand what she is saying. In the script, There's a scene that precedes this one where Sun Lo gives her a bag of money, and that's going to be important a little bit later on, as we'll see when she arrives in Shanghai, which is her destination, so that she can stay with Sun Lo's family and wait out the bandit invasion, if you will, that was happening in Sanchow. Now we're in Shanghai, a port city, a very important one in the 1930s. You'll see in this colorized version of a film originally made in black and white, the little Chinese silk outfit that she's wearing is colored red. But that was a costume that did appear at the 2015 auction of Shirley's costumes and personal effects. And it was actually a dark blue silk outfit. I always call 1936 the year of the perfect curl. By 1936, Shirley was the most important movie star in the world, and her hair was the subject of envy of mothers of little girls, and maybe the curse of little girls who didn't want their hair curled. And by 1936, the 56 curls were almost always perfectly formed. Gone were the days of the loose and tousled curls of her earlier films. As we watch it, however, you're going to see that even those perfectly formed curls will change. Sometimes they'll be very tight and short, and other times they'll be longer and looser. Those are the kind of things that some of us, shall I say, obsessed people notice. You can see very short and tight curls right here. The dog is Mr. Wu, not to be confused with the little Pekingese who appears later on in the film, the one who Shirley adopts in real life and takes home, promptly renaming him Ching Ching after her character in this film. And that Pekingese would become her closest of her many dogs and pets that she had at home. But this dog right here, Mr. Wu, is not that same dog. Now, we saw just a few moments ago Chang taking the money out from under Shirley's pillow so that he could go and gamble. The film deleted the part where she received the money. In the script, it also talks about instead of calling over to another boat, Ching Ching sees a peddler passing by and asks for the bone and gets the bone, but is told she has to give it back because she has no money to pay for it. According to the script, the man selling her or giving her the bone is saying, "Pay me." And Shirley says, "Just a minute." And he says, "Pay me or give back the bone." Don't really need to translate that. You can figure that out from the context of the film. Here we see a process shot. Shirley was not walking on that plank and probably did not have that boat behind her. She was filmed against a green screen or something similar to that, and then the footage of the shipyard was filmed and placed behind her. That was considered state of the art back in those days. Thanks for being patient. Sometimes I pause it to get my bearings and see where we are. As I was saying, this part has some rear projection, certainly the part where she was walking on the plank. But now she's walking along one of the streets of the 20th Century Fox backlot, which was dressed to look like a street in China. Here, for the first time, she meets Tommy Randall, who is played by Robert Young. Robert Young is known to TV viewers as the lead in Father Knows Best, and Marcus Welby, MD, and even in some, I imagine they were 1970s, Sanka coffee commercials. He would also play with Shirley again, this time playing her actual father as an adult in Adventure in Baltimore. Shirley's character asks, of course, how much is it? Or first tells him what he wants to buy and then asks how much is it. In the script, it's $5 is what the salesman quotes him, but Ching Ching tells him that it's only $1. In this, it's $15, actual price $5. But I don't know how Ching Ching could have known that, since the price is on the inside, and I didn't see her get a good look at the inside price. Of course, that little bit of teasing or mimicking and mocking would not be considered politically correct in these days. When I was younger and I watched that little dialogue between them when he says, "How come?" and she responds, I did not know what she was saying. It took me a long time to figure out that she was saying "in a junk" from Sanchow, a junk being a Chinese sailing ship. See, there's always something to learn when you watch a Shirley Temple film. Now, in this day and age, it would never fly to have a child go off with an unknown adult, as Shirley does in this film and in many of her films. More accepted in those days, and also was a way for the Shirley character, whatever character she was playing, to be rescued or to be taken care of in her distress as an orphan, which is usually what happened. Part of Shirley's, or the films appeal, the films of Shirley Temple's, not Shirley's appeal, but the film's appeal was that Shirley was taken care of by someone else, the way the world kind of wanted to take care of her. According to the script, she says, "Please bring milk and a bone for my dog, a glass of milk and an egg for me, and a glass of milk and 2 eggs for the gentleman." No, I'm just both there tonight. No, traveling around. No place in particular. You must be an orphan too. Unfortunately not. Let's talk for a moment about Robert Young, who I mentioned before as being most famous for his role in the television show Father Knows Best. He played the father, the patriarch of the family, title character, Jim Anderson, first on radio from 1949 through 1954, and then on television from 1954 through 1960. Prior to his work in television, he filmed over 100 movies in Hollywood between 1931 and 1952, never really achieving A+ star status, but did work alongside and opposite many of the highest and most popular female stars of the day. Robert Young was born in Chicago in 1907 and was married to his wife Betty for 61 years till her death, which is an absolute feat in Hollywood, both then and now. Although he normally played happy, particularly later on in his life, as Father Knows Best and Marcus Welby, happy, well-adjusted, sensible characters, he was actually quite bitter about Hollywood and the practices that he saw going on there. He was an alcoholic later on in life and had a suicide attempt as well. He died at the age of 91. Of course, my favorite role would be this in Stowaway, but I like Robert Young in Journey for Margaret, playing alongside Margaret O'Brien in her first major role. And he would play again with Margaret O'Brien in The Canterville Ghost. So he's had a lot of experience working with child stars. You can see in that scene, just before they cut out, Shirley's curls were longer and fuller and looser. Right. Here we have Eugene Pallett, the stocky character there in the middle, who initially, in his younger silent film days, was leading man slim and was in quite a few films, including Birth of a Nation. He actually started out in the silent films as a stuntman. In the script, the character of the Colonel, played by Eugene Pallett, is listed as someone named Billy DeBrett. Whoever that is, I'm not quite sure, but glad they went with Eugene. Here on the left, we have Astrid Allwyn playing Kay, and her friend Dora on the side. Astrid Allwyn played Cleo Marsh, the rather self-centered actress in Dimples, which was the movie previous to this one that Shirley did. Astrid Allwyn's role was a bit more substantial, according to the script, than what ended up in the final film, which is why she got the higher billing that she did. Eugene Pallett, one of, as I said, was a prolific actor as well. One of his most famous roles was that of Friar Tuck in Errol Flynn's version of Adventures of Robin Hood, done in 1938. Eugene Pallett was one of those character actors that was noted not just for his size, but his very distinctive, gravelly, bullfrog-like voice. Astrid Allwyn, who, as I said, worked with Shirley previous to this in Dimples, actually, after Dimples, married her co-star, which was Robert Kent, and they were married for a few years, beginning in 1937. Right before this scene, where Atkins, the butler, or the valet, comes to take Tommy Randall home, there was a scene about paying for their bar tab. The barkeep tells the Colonel that it's $40. The Colonel tells Robert Young's character that it's $80, gives the Colonel the $80, who then pockets half of that and gives the remaining of it to the bartender. Also in the script, instead of coming out to look for Shirley, he just simply forgets about her. He begins playing roulette with the girls and the colonel and starts drinking. He complains that thinks he's forgotten something, but he doesn't remember. In the script, there's no mention about the running away of the dog that we saw just a little bit earlier on the screen. There's also a bit of difference in the script in the scene where the Stowaway, which is Shirley, of course, is discovered. In the scene, the men hear the sound, which, of course, is Mr. Wu, and they realize that there must be a stowaway aboard, and they look for it. In the script, there's a bit where one of the men sees the shadow of the dragon head that Shirley will put on in a moment. They see the shadow on the wall. One of the men screams that it's a banshee, and then they go after it, but not too hurriedly, according to the script. The script even makes mention of that part right there, where Shirley's character eyes can be seen in the dragon, and the script rather says that her eyes alone convey the fear that she has, or something to that effect. I see. We can see only Johnny's eyes, eloquently expressing fear and bewilderment. The soldiers approach the Rolls Royce menacingly. Then suddenly the head officer snaps out the orders to go and find her, which is what they do. Here we have Robert Grieg playing the captain. He played Hives the butler in Animal Crackers, which was not a Shirley Temple film, was a Shirley Temple song in a Shirley Temple film, but instead Animal Crackers in this case was an early 1930s movie featuring the Marx Brothers. Now we have the two female leads, well, if you don't count Shirley, of Helen Wesley as Mrs. Hope and Susan Parker, played by Alice Faye. Oh, that voice of Helen Wesley's. And Alice Faye has a voice too, but quite a different type.
I'm afraid I'm bothering you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hope.
Helen Wesley was a fixture in quite a few Shirley Temple films. She played Blind Anna, the grandma in Heidi, 1937. She played to perfection the Aunt Miranda character in 1938's Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. And just before Stowaway, she played Mrs. Drew, Caroline Drew, in Dimples. Nobody screams like Helen Wesley, not even Fay Ray.
Come out of there or I'll blow you out.
We also, of course, have Alice Faye, who had made another film with Shirley that year, Poor Little Rich Girl. Although this was just a few films later, Alice Faye's look had been softened. Early in her career, she had platinum blonde hair and very high arched eyebrows, sort of in the mold of Jean Harlow. But as she gained more prominence and had more roles in film, she developed her own style. And by Stowaway, it was softened quite a bit to what you see here.
I guess so. Stowaway? Hey, how did you ever get on this ship anyway? I
In the script, when they ask what her name is, and she says Ching Ching or Barbara Stewart in English, that's not what the script says. The script has her saying her name is Johnny Stewart, but her Chinese name means the first blush of rosy dawn. I'm not sure how the Chinese words written here are pronounced, but the meaning is first blush of rosy dawn. Quite lovely and lyrical. In the script, it's written as Li Ming Mei Kwai, and I'm just guessing at the last part. First blush of rosy dawn. This scene remains pretty much the same in the script. However, there's a bit of Mrs. Hope saying that she doesn't approve of naughty little girls. And Susan says she hasn't done anything. And Mrs. Hope says, don't you call sneaking into strange rooms and scaring people to death nothing? Johnny says, Shirley's character, well, I was scared myself. Now, this part is completely different in the script. Instead of getting a new dress, she has been bathed, and according to the script, she's in her undies, fresh and clean again. Susan is seated at the edge of her bed, finishing combing Johnny's hair. Susan says, now I guess we can get you a clean dress in the ship store. Oh, no, thank you. I couldn't let you do that, says Johnny. Susan says, but you can't wear that anymore, indicating the soiled dress. And then Johnny goes to the pillowcase where she proceeds to take a pair of Mrs. Hope's scissors from her sewing basket and quickly makes a makeshift dress and ties it with a ribbon, I think. And she pulls a sash from the window curtain, kind of like Gone with the Wind, and makes herself a new clean white dress. I personally am glad they decided to go with this one because, as some of you may know, the dress that she's wearing, the pleated dress, which in real life is a powder blue, is one that's now in my collection. Also in that scene, instead of having Mr. Wu get taken off to the kennel by the captain, he remains with Shirley and is found sitting in Mrs. Hope's hat, which of course annoys her. And she complains about that, establishing, of course, her disdain for children and her unhappiness that this predicament has occurred on the ship. There's a bit of sauciness in this film that was just under the radar enough that it didn't alert the production code that was in place at the time. When he says, when Atkins, the butler, says, here's your checkbook, it's presumed to buy off a woman who has made claims on Robert Young's character, which it's been established and will be further established that he's quite a bit of a playboy. Sparks immediately.
No, we met in Shanghai yesterday for the first time.
After this scene, there was a scene, probably the scene that I wish I could see because it features Shirley wearing the dress that is now in my collection. Um, One of the deleted scenes that I really wish had surfaced. And in it, Shirley's character is talking with Susan, and Susan is tying a ribbon in her hair when the knock comes at the door. And it's Tommy Randall. Following him, also bearing packages, are Kay and Dora, the Colonel, the ship's steward, and several others, all singing Happy Birthday to You. And they bow to Susan and hand the packages to Johnny. Johnny, which of course is Ching Ching, says, "Uncle Tommy, it isn't my birthday." And he goes on to say, "What, not your birthday? What are we going to do with all of these presents?" And then Tommy says, "Oh, now I remember, it must be my birthday." He opens a package, and it's a little girl's dress. According to stills of the time, it's the dress that she would wear later in the film when she sings, "You Gotta Smile." Tommy holds it up and says, "It doesn't fit me." Johnny says, "Maybe you can take it back, though to exchange a gift is to make an enemy of the giver." Then they, of course, all in fun, realize that it would fit Shirley, Johnny, Ching Ching. And then they open the other packages, revealing a doll, other toys, a child's hat. And in the script, it says, "Here might be spotted a song or dance for Johnny." There was a song and dance filmed here. We're not quite sure if it was a song called "I Want to Go to the Zoo," for which sheet music for the film does exist, or "All Aboard Lullaby Choo Choo Song," which was later planned for Rebecca, but didn't get used there either. But in any event, they did do a song and dance. There's a snippet of that seen in this trailer to Stowaway, but it ultimately all got deleted and ended up on the cutting room floor.
It's not 10 yet. The shank of the evening.
The shank of the evening. One of my favorite lines.
But I think it's customary for little children to retire rather early. Is it really your bedtime, Ching Ching? Here, Miss Ching Ching.
In the script, Shirley's character looks among all the gifts that she's been given and can't find pajamas or a robe. And Uncle Tommy admits that that's something that they didn't think of buying. So instead, she wears some of his old, or a pair of his pajamas, which of course are oversized.
A lullaby. You know, a vocal Mickey Finn.
A vocal Mickey Finn. Of course, as a child, I did not know what that meant. Mickey Finn was a drink laced with something to make the drinker, I don't know, either pass out or something along the lines of what we call roofies today, I imagine. Again, a little sauciness in a film for Shirley. The reference to a Mickey Finn would come again in a lyric from the first Broadway play I ever saw, which was 1977's Annie. The Hard Knock Life orphans sing about giving Miss Hannigan, the dreaded orphan head, a Mickey Finn. I don't think it had the terrible connotations that roofies have today, but it was something along those lines. Good night, my love. Sweet men and men will guide. Come now, you sleepy head. One of Shirley's most beautiful and enduring songs. As would happen in many of her films, a character would reprise this song, which Alice Faye will do in just a minute. And even though Alice Faye has a gorgeous and sultry voice. I happen to think Shirley does an even better job here. As a child, it took me a long time to figure out what she was saying there, listening to my little 33 1/3 record album. Doggy's asleep, but he's smart. Now you can see that she is here in Uncle Tommy's stateroom, but earlier in the film, the captain says that she would be better off with Susan Parker, presumably because she's a woman. How did she end up here in Uncle Tommy's stateroom? Well, that was also explained in the deleted scene where she's given gifts and and they sing a song. Mrs. Hope comes in and is unhappy about the whole situation and says, well, essentially, don't you think we've done enough here? And Ching Ching then goes with Uncle Tommy.
You've been very sweet to that child, Mr. Man. Good night. Good night. You've been very sweet to that child, Mr. Man.
Shirley writes in her 1988 autobiography, Child Star, a bit about the making of Stowaway. She talks about how she had a pie factory. And in fact, the sign for Shirley Temple's Pie Factory did appear in the 2015 auction of her personal effects. Shirley writes, realizing that even at my age, I thought deals were fun, Jonesy, who was prop man, put me in business with a garishly painted handcart. Under an overhead billboard, that's the one that ended up in the in the auction, under an overhead billboard proclaiming Shirley Temple's Pie Factory, he stuffed it with several dozen small fruit tarts obtained free from the commissary bakery. A more perfect venture is hard to imagine. No startup cost, no cost for inventory. My customers were all captive. Among those trapped was Sam Engel, nominal author of my previous film, Stowaway. Bending over, he listened to my sales pitch, slack-jawed and breathing through his mouth, head bobbing. His purchase was one cherry tart. Later on that same page in her autobiography, she talks about how the studio was being legally challenged, for the ownership of Stowaway's story and music. Someone named Joan Storm Desendorf claimed that the screenplay was stolen from her, saying the tale was her own dancing destiny, twice submitted to the studio and twice rejected, but allegedly then plagiarized by screenwriter Sam Engel as Stowaway. All wrong, claims Stephen Tamas from the distant Budapest. It was his yarn, copyrighted in Yugoslavia, already published in book form and serialized in Hungary. The 20th Century Fox representative in London had ordered it from Tamas and then had completely forgotten about the source. She also goes on to say that another suit was filed in New York federal court by Charles McCord against the songwriters for Stowaway, Mac Gordon and Harry Revel, charging them with plagiarism of the hit song Goodnight My Love. Not true, cried Argentine composer Juan Calabi. The song was his, copyrighted. To reinforce his claim, he convened a jury of 700 theatergoers in Buenos Aires, who overwhelmingly judged the Stowaway song to be a duplicate of the Calabi's original rumba, Senorita. So Stowaway was not without its difficulties. One of them was that at one point Alice Faye came down with the flu, and Shirley was a bit put out to find out that her production on one of her films would be delayed. She also writes in Child Star that she kind of felt a little put out by the fact that her songs and Alice Faye's songs, meaning Goodnight My Love, which is coming up, the Alice Faye version, Shirley felt she was kind of being compared to, of course, a completely different type of singer. All right, let's listen to Alice's version, and it's up to the listener to decide which they like the best.
You didn't write the words.
I've already told you my
If you
opinion.
don't sing it, I will. You win. Night, my love. The tidal moon is descending. Good night, my love. My moment with you now is ending. It was so heavenly.
Lyrics, of course, are different, fitting that of an adult.
It will be heavenly to hold you again in a dream. The stars above have promised to meet us tomorrow. Till then,
I'm doing everything I can not to sing along. I'll spare the listeners that.
So for the present, dear, we'll have to part. Sleep tight, my love. Good night, my love. Remember that you're mine, sweetheart.
Just beautiful. Oh, there's Mrs. Hope.
Good night. Good night. And good night to you too. Good night.
And I think I'll stop the film here, and I will resume it with part 2 in just a little bit. Thanks for sticking around.